Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you yet again, as always, every single morning, baby. It's Thursday, February 13th. We'll get into this thing, man. I do not have a lot going on in this card here. I have one play. It's in college basketball. I will talk about the rest. There's kind of a small NBA card headed into the All-Star break, and I'll touch on the world hockey stuff as well. Yesterday, 2-1. It was a winning day. It was looking like it was going to go 3-0. I mean, we got the win on Villanova, outright win in the first game, which I know there was a 14-0 run in that game, and I wasn't paying any attention to it, so I don't even know which team had the 14-0 run in that game, but I know that Villanova was down 1 point in the final several seconds of the game, so it was like, okay, they're going to cover the plus 3.5 unless somehow they get fouled and get one free throw and send it into overtime, which luckily that didn't happen because I probably would not have wanted to have to endure overtime in that one. And what did happen is they hit a three, which I think was at the buzzer, and they wound up winning the game by 2, so we get the outright win on Villanova as the dog there, ending that long St. John's win streak. Good win for Villanova there. Then the easiest one of the night was the wire-to-wire win for Georgia Tech over Stanford. No sweat in that one. Stanford couldn't score in that game at all, which you'd expect when it's Georgia Tech. You kind of think it's going to be like a faster game, but it was a low-scoring, horrendous game. And Georgia Tech had the lead the whole way, and they won easy. Then Loyola Maryland blew my night, as it could have gone 3-0 night. Loyola Maryland, I mean, they were losing the game early. They took the lead. They had the lead late in the game. They were up 3 with 3.5 minutes left, and they never scored again. Yeah, they didn't score for the final 3.5 minutes, and Army didn't even really score that much over that span, but I think they scored 6-7 points, and they wound up winning the game. But again, it was Loyola Maryland didn't score any points over that remaining time span, and they had a horrible shooting night. I think 28% from the field or something like that. I'd have to go back and look it up, but that was pretty much what led to their demise. They could have won that game. I think they won the turnover battle. It looked like a game that they probably should have won. So we go 2-1 instead of 3-0, but I'll take the winning day, man. It's fine. College basketball, we have a big slate today, but I got to say, man, I don't love what I see for most of this card. We got games starting at 5 p.m. with this Colonial game on CBS Sports. I don't know why anybody would want to watch Monmouth and Stony Brook as the opening game here on CBS Sports Network, but that is the way that it is. Neither of these teams are great. Monmouth is probably a little bit underrated, at least. Stony Brook is terrible. Monmouth is coming off a close game against Towson, who's now in the driver's seat in the Colonial, even though, like I said, I think Wilmington is the best team in this conference, UNC Wilmington. Monmouth coming off that big game against Towson. Close game, ended their win streak. I believe they already beat Stony Brook, right? Yeah, they already beat Stony Brook at home by 22 points, and they have Towson again up next in 2 days on Saturday. So they are in a Towson sandwich, which I don't know what kind of sandwiches they eat in Towson, Maryland, but that is a sandwich spot. So I would look to Stony Brook in this one. The line also looks pretty easy to take Monmouth at a 2.5-point favorite. So I would not look that way. Stony Brook is pretty bad, though. I'm not going to quite come in on this. Let me see. Stony Brook is coming off a game. They actually beat Hofstra on the road, which is a big upset of 12.5 points. So I can't play Stony Brook either because they could potentially be in a letdown spot. So I'm not going to touch this game. Monmouth still just sitting at like a 2-point favorite. I got to zoom in here. 2-point favorite with juice for Monmouth. So that's what's going on there. Cal Baptist, we know I had them in their last game. They upset Grand Canyon. Huge win for Cal Baptist coming off that game against Grand Canyon. Now they got to turn around and face UT Arlington, who they haven't faced yet this year. They're going to go back out on the road, and they've not been on the road for a while. Although they did win their last 2 road games, they haven't exactly been awful on the road. I just don't know if I want to quite come in on this, but it should probably be a letdown spot for Cal Baptist. I mean, you beat the class of the WAC, who's Grand Canyon. You beat them by that much, by double digits, and I told you Grand Canyon was in a terrible spot. I would be looking to the UT Arlington side here, and UT Arlington I think is a little bit better than their ugly sub-500 record looks. UT Arlington's coming off a close call against Seattle, though, so that's kind of the problem I have here. Seattle was a 9.5-point favorite in that game. This Seattle team is a lot better than the record would tell you. Seattle's got a pretty decent amount of talent on this team, man. They are one of the better teams in the WAC. They face a pretty difficult out-of-conference schedule, so with UT Arlington putting up that type of effort against Seattle, I just don't know that I can quite do that either, so I'm going to pass on this one as well. But Cal Baptist does appear to be in a letdown spot. They are up from 1 with juice to 1.5, though. And again, it's a close line where you're looking at Cal Baptist, the team with the better record, in basically just a pick the winner spot. With that line, it does almost look too easy to take Cal Baptist. So that's what we got happening in that game. Longwood and High Point, I think, were supposed to play last night, and for some reason it got moved to tonight. I don't know why, unless it was just some fuckery with the board, because I saw it was on the board yesterday but canceled. I don't know, but either way, this is a big game in the Big South. This is a good game. Longwood is pretty good, even though they're down at like 6th in the conference right now. They're definitely not a bad team. They are coming off 3 straight losses, though, which is pretty brutal. They are coming off a close loss to Radford, who is also a pretty good team, so I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain that effort multiple times in a row. They did beat High Point by 2 at home as well, so this is also in-season revenge for High Point as well. High Point is the better team, so they're laying a lot of points here. I assume they're probably like a double-digit favorite here. They are a very good team, man. High Point, they're definitely the best team in this conference. Up from 9 with juice to 10.5 with juice, so there is some movement, moving that line up on High Point. But High Point's coming off a huge overtime win against UNC Asheville, which was also revenge. UNC Asheville was one of their 2 conference losses where they lost on the road at UNC Asheville. They got their revenge, but in an overtime game. How much are they going to have left coming into this game against Longwood? And they did beat Radford the game before that too. So they're stringing together some big performances in a row. But then you look at it and you say, well, wait a minute. Who was that second team they lost to in conference? The only team that they have not exacted revenge on yet? Oh, yeah, it's Longwood. So High Point is obviously going to come into this game still focused. It's just a matter of, are they going to be tired out after that huge overtime win over UNC Asheville to reclaim top spot in the Big South? I don't know, man. So it's a tough handicap there, too. High Point is definitely the better team, but I could see that really going either way. So I don't even want to say that I have a lean on that necessarily. Charleston and UNC Wilmington, that's going to be the good one in the Colonial on CBS Sports. Hey, they're actually giving you the best game in the Colonial tonight as well, even though they're giving you one of the worst before this one. So you got to endure that one or just skip it. Skip that first game. Charleston, they're actually in a road revenge spot here. They actually lost at home, I'm pretty sure, somewhere in this. Yeah, here it is. They lost at home by 2 to UNC Wilmington earlier in the season. So this Charleston team, they're going to be looking for a little bit of road revenge here, which is a decent motivator. They're coming off an okay win over Elon, but I mean, Elon starting to fall down. I mean, we knew they were kind of a fake team, basically. Like, they're not as good as what they looked earlier in the season. UNC Wilmington, they're just rolling right now, man. They're kind of like 2 straight road wins. So both teams are going to show up in this game, man. I mean, UNC Wilmington is probably the best team in this conference this year. Charleston has been the best team the last couple of years, so it is a big battle. It's kind of like it's like the former dominant team in the conference who's not quite as good this year up against the new team that's trying to be the best in the conference. It's a crazy matchup. It's a good matchup, man. I would lean slightly to Charleston just because they do have that extra road revenge angle there, but Wilmington is the better team, as the odds makers are telling you. So that's the thing there that the public might look at this and think, oh, well, this is going to be a competitive matchup. And I remember Charleston being in the tournament, so getting like 6.5 points with them looks somewhat tempting. So maybe there will be a little bit of that going on in this game. It's hard to say. Wilmington's down from 7 to 6.5, so the money looks like it has driven the line down a little bit in that game. We'll see what happens. Next up, another Colonial game that's not on CBS Sports. And the game that I'm actually playing, the only play that I have Hofstra plus 1.5. And I know Hofstra has been hit or miss for me. I think I'm 1-2 playing on them this year, and I am 1-0 playing against them this year, I think. Something like that. I don't know. I forget. Maybe I have that slightly wrong. Hofstra did not do well for me in the last time I played them, I think. But I like the spot for Hofstra. They're at William and Mary. William and Mary is starting to fall down, man. As I was saying, William and Mary, they were kind of a fraud, top team in the conference. They were like sitting atop this conference for a while, and I'm like, nah, they're not the best team in this conference. They're okay, but they're certainly not going to be the best team in this conference. They were on a roll for a while, rolling through this conference. They did lose to some of the more competitive teams early on. UNC Wilmington, Campbell. I mean, those teams are decent, but losing by, 41 to Campbell, even though it is Campbell. It's on the road. Campbell's okay, and they've been hot recently, but still, you can't lose by 41 to anybody, man. So some red flags in there for William and Mary, although they bounced back from that and beat Charleston. But since then, they haven't won a game. They lost 2 more road games. Coming back home, and I know they're undefeated on this floor in conference play, but they've played mostly bad teams really on this floor. I mean, Elon's not great. NCA&T, Hampton, Monmouth. I mean, I'm not going to really praise them for all those wins. And then, they got the win against Charleston. Other than that, they haven't really faced any of the other top half teams in this conference. I don't know if I would say Hofstra's a top half team in this conference, but I will say they are better than you think that they are. So this is kind of a misleading matchup. It's a misleading spread where the spread is actually telling you that Hofstra is actually the better team, as they're only getting 1.5 at William and Mary, and that looks like it couldn't possibly be the case with Hofstra being in the bottom group in this conference as far as the records are concerned, and William and Mary being up near the top the whole time. But it is. William and Mary was overperforming. I think Hofstra's been a bit underperforming, so that's why I kind of like this play. William and Mary, they're coming off 2 losses on the road. Those are tough road games, though, man. And coming back home, I think the knee-jerk reaction, if the public's going to look at this, they're going to think, well, William and Mary's got the better records. They must be the better team. And you're basically just asking me who's going to win the game, and they're going to bounce back now that they're back at home. Yeah, I don't think it works that way, man. And this is a road revenge spot for Hofstra, and I think it's actually a pretty strong one because William and Mary went in and embarrassed Hofstra in that first matchup, which was, I believe, the first conference game that they had. It was the first one since regular conference play started, at least. They went in and they beat Hofstra on the road by 18 points, man, at Hofstra's place. It was just a bad night for Hofstra. William and Mary shot 57.1% from 3 in that game. And yes, I know they dominated the boards, but 57.1% from 3, huge outlier there, man. And Hofstra shot a bit under what you might expect, although, I know their offense isn't good. Yes, William and Mary is the better of these two offensive teams. Hofstra 24.3% from 3. Hofstra won the turnover battle. They did lose the rebound battle, though, but still, not a game that looks like Hofstra should have gotten completely blown out if you don't look at what happened with the 3-point percentage. So the 3-pointers were a lot of that, man. William and Mary had 12 threes in the game to Hofstra. Well, actually, it was only 12-9, but still, that shooting percentage is crazy, man. So I think it is a huge revenge spot because of that for Hofstra after such a bad performance at home. I think Hofstra's really going to be focused on this game. And William and Mary may actually have one eye looking ahead because they got Drexel up next, and Drexel just smacked them by 20 points. So it's a chance at quick revenge there. They might overlook Hofstra with Hofstra not playing well and having already beaten Hofstra easily on the road. They might not pay a whole lot of attention, even though I know they're coming off 2 straight losses. They got revenge against Drexel up next, and then they got UNC Wilmington, Elon, who's still one of the top half of teams, I guess, in the conference, and then Towson. So they got a bunch of bigger games up next. So if they're going to overlook one of any of this group of games, it's probably going to be this Hofstra game. And Hofstra, I don't think is going to overlook this game in any way. I mean, they know that they got embarrassed on their own floor by this William and Mary team earlier this year. But not only that, but they've lost 3 games in a row, and the last 2 of them were at home as favorites against Northeastern and then Stony Brook. How do you lose as a 12.5-point favorite at home to Stony Brook? So I think for all these reasons, you're going to get a very focused Hofstra team coming into this game, man. I mean, you lose as a huge favorite like this to a really bad team. And maybe they were looking ahead or something. Who knows? Hofstra had the lead late in this game. They were up 8 in the final several minutes and somehow imploded, blew the game. And this is another one with a very high 3-point percentage against them. Stony Brook, 52.9% from 3. I don't think that's going to happen again. Hofstra again won the turnover battles. This Hofstra team, they don't turn the ball over that much. So that's kind of a good sign, although I know they're going to be on the road this time. So the turnover battle might not be won by them, but still, coming off such an embarrassing loss, man, I think they're going to be more heavily focused to get this game. I like Hofstra, and then the fact still also remains that Hofstra, as you can see, the odds makers have it and Ncaab has it. He has them higher ranked than William and Mary, only by 9 spots, but still, he's got Hofstra as the better team. Yes, I know William and Mary plays ridiculously fast, 18th in the country, and Hofstra way down to 337th, so I know the home team usually can dictate the pace, but it is easier if you're the road team and you're the slowdown team. It is a little bit easier to get control of the pace to some extent if you try to slow the game down again. Because like I said, when you have possession of the ball, there's only so much the defense can really do to you. So you can try to hold on to that ball unless the other team is really pressuring you and you're really going to crack. But then that's going to tire the other team out too. So I don't mind that Hofstra's the slowdown team here. And the one thing that you are getting is Hofstra is the way better of the two defenses at 103rd. They're almost a top 100 in defensive efficiency. William and Mary is almost in the bottom, like 150 in defensive efficiency, down at 292. Yes, they're the way better offense, 139th. Hofstra all the way down at 296. But you know, a lot of times I prefer defense over offense, including when it's a pick-the-winner situation or when you're getting some points, which we are here. And he's got Hofstra, somewhat lucky in 161st, but William and Mary 72nd in luck. And William and Mary's been high up in the luck index for Ncaab all year, basically saying that they're overperforming this year. And Hofstra, not really underperforming, although I think they kind of are, to be honest. I think Hofstra's not quite as bad as their record looks. So they got the better defense as well. So for all those reasons, Hofstra is my one play today. Hofstra plus 1.5. That's the game where most things lined up for me to come in and be like, yep, I want to jump on this side. Jacksonville State, I will say, could overlook Sam Houston in this spot. Sam Houston down at the bottom of Conference USA, but they're really not as bad as they look. And there's a really misleading line on this game. Jacksonville State has won a bunch of games in a row, and they're up at the top of this conference now, even though I think Liberty is the best team in this conference, even though I know Jacksonville State beat Liberty at home. They beat Middle Tennessee, and beat Western Kentucky. Even though Western Kentucky has fallen down a bit, they're not a bad team. So 3 big wins in a row. Now they go out on the road to face Sam Houston, who they already beat earlier this season by 8 at home. And after that, they got Louisiana Tech, New Mexico, UTEP, and Liberty all in a row. And those teams are all teams that are going to draw your focus more than Sam Houston would, as Sam Houston's sitting at the bottom of the conference. So I think this might be a spot where you might want to look to Sam Houston. I know I've gotten in trouble playing Sam Houston, I think maybe twice this year, and they're 0-2 for me. But problem with this is that Sam Houston just played a really good game at Liberty as 10.5-point underdogs. They took Liberty basically to the wire, man. They were within 1 possession in the final minute of the game and wound up losing the game. So I don't think I could play Sam Houston coming off of that game either. So it is a bad spot for both teams, so I have to just pass on this one as well. Kind of a lot of that today, which is why I only have one play. But then you look at the spread, I will say, the spread is very misleading looking, obviously. You got Sam Houston, who has 1 win in conference, a horrific record, up against this Jacksonville State team that has a very pretty record, a way better looking record, and Sam Houston is the 1-point favorite here. I mean, that's one of these like mindfuck lines where it's like, what is going on here? Well, the odds makers are telling you what's going on. The odds makers are telling you that even though the records might look like there's a huge gap between these two teams, there isn't that much of a gap between these two teams. Jacksonville State is the better team, but not by as much as you would think. So that is what is going on in that game. Marshall is coming off a big win over Arkansas State, who is the best team in this conference, in the Sun Belt. They're playing South Alabama, who I believe South Alabama hasn't played since the Sun Belt MAC Challenge. Yeah, where they lost to Akron. Kind of a brutal spot, though. Really, Akron's really good, and also 3 road games in a row. I mean, not easy to do. So Marshall has played more recently. They're coming off a big win, and yes, I know playing South Alabama is also a big game. I mean, they're one of the teams near the top of this conference as well. Will Marshall start tiring out, though? South Alabama's the more rested team here. They're coming off a loss. Marshall, coming off a big win, might not be able to sustain that effort, even though, yes, they're going to show up for South Alabama. They might run out of steam a little bit. South Alabama up from 4-5 in this game. So maybe I would have a slight lean that way, but again, it's not going to be strong. Seattle, I would lean their way against Abilene Christian. Like what I already said, Seattle, as a pretty big favorite, had a close call against UT Arlington. Now they're going out to Abilene Christian. They only beat Abilene Christian by 2 at home earlier this year, and they're 8.5-point favorites against Abilene Christian. So they're facing Abilene Christian again, and it's not a road revenge angle, but when the better team at home almost lost the first game, they tend to still be focused on that team because they know that team almost caught them. So I think they probably will be focused coming into this game against Abilene Christian. And both teams have bad-looking records, but as I said, Seattle is significantly better than their record looks. Abilene Christian isn't really as much. Abilene Christian's coming off a couple easy wins. They should be focused for the Seattle game because they're coming off lesser opponents, but it is still going to be a step up in class for them. Seattle is good enough that they're laying 2.5 on the road, which that kind of looks misleading as well when you see two teams with similar records, and the team with a slightly worse overall record actually laying points on the road. Looks weird, but Seattle is the better team, and they're coming off that close call there. So I would look to Seattle in that one. You got Omaha and South Dakota State, and I keep saying Omaha. They're a fraud, dude. They're just not as good as they look in the Summit Conference, and they keep winning at 10-1 now. They just beat North Dakota State again to sweep the season series. They already beat South Dakota State not on the road, at home, by 7 points. And they got St. Thomas up next, who they did already beat as well. But that's a big game, too. All of these games are big, these games all in a row. But South Dakota State is the better team. And, I mean, it's not even just my opinion. They are the better team. The odds makers are going to tell you that. I know that they've lost more games in conference, but this is going to be a revenge spot for them. The problem is they're coming off a big win themselves against St. Thomas, who's another good team in this conference. And St. Thomas, unfortunately, is still not eligible to be in the tournament because they're in the last year of transition to Division I. I think it's bullshit. I mean, I think a couple of years of transition is fine, but it was 4 years, and now it's been reduced to 3 for St. Thomas, but that still means they're not eligible till next year. I mean, at this point, St. Thomas has been one of the best teams in this conference basically since they came in. I think at this point, if they win the conference, they should probably be in the tournament, but it's not going to happen. But either way, South Dakota State, that was a big win for them over St. Thomas, so I can't quite play South Dakota State either. Both these teams coming off big wins, though. It is a revenge spot for South Dakota State. And looking at these teams' records, you might think, well, how is Omaha, who has the better record, a 9.5-point underdog against South Dakota State? But again, I keep telling you, Omaha is a fraud. And at some point, I think the wheels have to come off of this team. South Dakota State is probably the best team in this conference. I think they're going to show that tonight. They're up from 9.5 to 9.5 with juice. And I know I keep saying I lean against Omaha, but at some point, it's got to start happening, man. And South Dakota State is the better team. They should be focused. They're at home. They're a big favorite. I highly doubt that they lose this game. Whether or not they cover, maybe that's a bit more of a question. But still, I mean, I would lean towards them covering as well. Little Rock is coming off that big win over they were coming off the big win over Moorhead, and then they lost to SEMO. So never mind. They're still coming off 2 big games, though. Now they got Tennessee Tech, who they already beat on the road. So it is still them coming off 2 big games. Tennessee Tech, it is still a little bit of road revenge for them. Little Rock is sitting at an 8-point favorite. Maybe it makes sense to take the points with Tennessee Tech. I'll stay away. One of the only big games on the whole board today, we have this one Big Ten game mixed in. Maryland is at Nebraska today, so if you want to watch a game with a ranked team, you got Maryland and Nebraska in this Big Ten matchup, and Nebraska is one of those unranked favorites, man. At home, they're unranked. They're down from 1 with juice to 1, though. This is a spot where I don't really know that I would want to try to play Nebraska in this spot, man. Maryland is the better team. I think Maryland, being ranked 25th, is actually underranking them. I've been saying Maryland is good and better than you think they are basically all season. They've had a difficult schedule. I know their record's not that great in conference. Their schedule hasn't really been easy. They got that win over Rutgers. Now they're coming off that. They did already beat Nebraska at home, but they were 9.5-point favorites, and they almost lost. They won right at the end of the game, so I think they're going to remember that. Maryland did have the lead, and they totally stalled out, and Nebraska came all the way back and tied the game in the final minute. And Maryland, who had the game basically looking like it was in hand, wound up having to escape that game. So I think they're going to remember that. So I don't think you're going to get an unfocused Maryland team this time coming into Nebraska. They just beat Rutgers. Who cares? Rutgers not good, as we saw. They didn't even beat Iowa last night. Nebraska, yeah, I know they're good at home. I know Maryland is like safely in the tournament at this point. Nebraska, they're a bubble team. They've won 4 in a row now, starting to turn it around. Big road wins, too. Shocking road wins on the Pacific Coast. I did not expect that. I didn't expect them to win either of those games, to be honest. Nebraska certainly better at home than they are on the road, which they are tonight. They've started to turn it around at home with their last 2 home wins being over Illinois and Ohio State. But that's a pretty big win beating Ohio State, man. Ohio State's right above them in conference play. Ohio State, a little bit of an uglier overall record, but they probably face a difficult out-of-conference schedule. Nebraska and Ohio State are both fighting for for a tournament bid right now. Both these teams on the bubble. So that was a big win for Nebraska. But again, they need to keep winning because they need to pad their resume, man, to make sure that they get into the tournament. Because right now they're certainly right on the bubble. That's where I would have them right now. So they're going to be focused as well. But when it's a spot where both teams might be focused, even though the line looks misleading, and it's like, hey, like how am I getting a point with the ranked team, with the team with the better record? In this case, I really don't know that I would want to fade Maryland in this one, man. I can see both teams showing up in this one. So it's a close call in this one. I mean, I don't know if the fact that the home team is the unranked favorite would like push me over the top towards leaning to Nebraska. I'm not sure that I would in that game. I might actually slightly lean with the market kind of moving down on them towards Maryland, but I think it's a very close call there. 2 teams being focused. Maryland is the better team there. So, again, it's a tough call. Idaho State and Montana should probably be the best Big Sky matchup tonight. Idaho State's not very bad. They're right behind Montana, really, even though Montana's overall record looks a bit prettier. Montana did not suffer from the sandwich against Northern Arizona. I had Northern Arizona in that game, and Northern Arizona blew it. They definitely could have won the game. They had the late lead. Montana had beaten Northern Colorado, which was a huge win in this conference. It was a second straight road game. They had Idaho State up next. And by the way, Idaho State is one of only 2 teams in conference that's beaten Montana this year. The other one was Northern Colorado, so they already got revenge against them. These were both embarrassing losses. I mean, especially that one at home to Northern Colorado, but still, they lost by 24 at Idaho State. Now they're hosting Idaho State, and then the better team. I think you're going to get a focused Montana team here. They kind of escaped against Northern Arizona. Idaho State, yeah, I know they kind of just escaped as well against Weber State, who isn't really playing that well this year. Weber State has been one of the better teams of this conference more often than not, but this year is one of those not years for them. They are not that good. I would lean to Montana on this one, as I was just alluding to. Even though they're down from 5.5 to 4.5, I don't really understand why. This is their chance to get revenge on the only unavenged conference loss that they have this year. So I do think you're going to get a focused Montana team in that one. So I don't know why the line is dropped on them. That is the way that I would look there. Liberty, New Mexico State maybe is going to be a good game. New Mexico State's starting to fall apart, but they've lost a bunch of games recently. But Liberty up from 3.5 to 4, but that's not a huge line. So oddsmakers kind of telling you, yeah, Liberty's the better team, but with New Mexico State being the home team, it's a little bit more difficult. And for a team that's in Virginia like Liberty to have to go out to New Mexico, kind of a weird travel spot there. These conferences are so weird, man, with these teams now with these realignments having to fly like weird distances, long distances, like in some cases entirely across the country. Very, very strange. So I don't really know what I would want to do with this game. Liberty just barely beat Sam Houston, though, so they may have been looking ahead. But again, they've already beaten New Mexico by 8, New Mexico State, at home by 8. And they do have UTEP up next. And UTEP is one of the only teams, maybe the only team, that came into their place and beat them. No, just them and Western Kentucky, So that's still a big road revenge game for UTEP coming up. So maybe Liberty won't totally focus on New Mexico State, especially because they're starting to fall apart. So it might actually make sense to try to take the points with New Mexico State in this one for those reasons. New Mexico State coming off a close loss to UTEP, though, after a horrific loss the game before that to Western Kentucky. They played well against UTEP, but they lost at home, which isn't great. UTEP is the better of those 2 teams, but still. I don't know. I don't know what I want to do there. And then UC San Diego's coming off their win of the season, man. They just got revenge against UC Irvine. It was road revenge. Somehow UC Irvine went into their place and beat them, and then they went into UC Irvine and beat them, which is really strange to see both road teams winning in that matchup because there's a huge tempo disparity where UC San Diego likes to play fast, and UC Irvine likes to play really slow. So you'd think that the home team would probably win both games in that series, and instead both road teams won. And UC San Diego not only won and got revenge, but they won by almost 20 points. Absolutely huge win for them. And now it's a second straight road game going out to Bakersfield, who I believe, did they beat them already, or have they not played them yet? Let me see. I don't even know. How do they even put this up here? Let me see. Oh, it's C-Sub, a CSU Bakersfield. Yes, they did already beat them at home by 21 points. They've already beaten this Bakersfield team by 21 points. They got UC Davis up next, who is doing decently and at least is a big name in this conference. So I think it is a bad spot for UC San Diego, man. So I would look to grab the points with Bakersfield. I know I lost once on Bakersfield in what I thought was a really good spot to play them. Bakersfield has now lost 5 games in a row. But their last game they lost on the road is 6.5-point dogs to UC Riverside, and they played pretty well in this game. They were right in this game, right to the end, pretty much. So it's not really a game that I want to try to come in and play Cal State Bakersfield either after they put in a big performance there. Their court looks insane, by the way. This is what their court looks like. If you see my screen, this bright blue court at Bakersfield, it's crazy. It's one of the craziest college basketball courts. It's wild. It's loud. But still, I think the UC San Diego is in the worst spot, so I would look to fade them in this game if I was going to play it. Bakersfield also likes to really try to slow the game down, and UC San Diego likes to speed it up. And I know Irvine was not successful in doing that, but Bakersfield may actually be able to do it to some extent, enough to come within 12.5 here. The line's up from 11.5 to 12.5, so that's how I would look at that game. And I think that's basically it, except San Francisco and Gonzaga. That's a big matchup in conference play in the WCC. And you look at these teams, San Francisco has the better record both overall and in conference. So it looks like San Francisco's the better team. Odds makers, Gonzaga's a 14.5-point favorite, actually. So even though the records don't look like it at all, the odds makers are telling you Gonzaga is a gigantic favorite in this game. So I think the public is going to look at this and think getting 14.5 with the team with the better record looks like an unbelievable steal, and I would not agree with that. I mean, the odds makers are telling you what you should think in this game, man. Gonzaga is way underperforming right now. KenPom has them as one of the least lucky teams in the entire country, way down. I'm talking right at the bottom. He has them as the 11th best team in the country, 7th in offensive efficiency, top 50 in both. They're a fast tempo team, and he has them bottom 15 basically in luck. So one of the most unlucky teams in the entire country. He's got San Francisco down at 65th in the country, and they play a bit slower. They don't crack the top 50 in either offense or defense, and they're 62nd in luck, so almost the complete opposite of Gonzaga. They're way luckier. So you're going to look at Gonzaga as the way better offense who's going to try to speed this game up. I would only look to lay the points with Gonzaga on this one. The line is just hilariously misleading, I think, in this one. Up from 14 to 14 with juice. The bracket dudes, bracketologists are all saying Gonzaga, oh, they're not Gonzaga anymore. They're down this year. I don't really agree that they are. I think you're going to see them start turning it on. This Gonzaga team, very well coached still. They still have a lot of talent on this team. I think they're very, very much underperforming this year. So that's how I look at that. NBA, we do have 5 games today. I don't want to touch any of these games. All of these teams played yesterday, and I didn't play any NBA game yesterday. I was right about the Clippers, so unfortunately I didn't play that one. Memphis is really good in back-to-backs, but they did lose last night. I leaned to the Clippers. I probably should have jumped in on that one. I did like that one. That was my favorite one last night, and I mentioned I leaned Cleveland as well, and Cleveland obviously won and covered as well. I wasn't going to really want to lay that many points, but it did get there on that one, so I was right about both those leans. But now every team in the NBA played yesterday. I skipped the whole thing. We're going into the All-Star break, and I'm skipping it today too. Again, every team played yesterday. The one really big game up today, well, actually a couple. Golden State is at Houston. Houston's a 4.5-point favorite. I would probably lean to Houston in this one, man. I mean, I think Golden State, yeah. They're looking okay with Jimmy Butler in there, but Houston down from 7 to 6.5 with juice, but 52% of tickets, 86% of the cash. So the cash is coming in on them. I would agree with Houston, like I just said. Houston, they're coming off a win at home over Phoenix. They're not traveling. Beating Phoenix at this point is kind of like whatever. Even though they do have Kevin Durant there, I'm not sure that that's that impressive a win at this point, whereas Golden State played a pretty big game in Dallas, although I don't know if they're going to consider it to be embarrassing that they lost to Dallas with no AD. Obviously, AD is going to be out through the All-Star break, and he only played like less than one game for them so far. And I think they have some other injuries there too, so maybe Golden State will be embarrassed too, but they're having to travel, and it's not easy to play multiple Texas teams with no rest like this, man. So I think Houston probably is the right lean there. Sacramento and New Orleans. Sacramento went in and beat New Orleans last night as 5.5-point favorites. So now this is a zigzag spot, and Sacramento's up from 7 to 8 in this one with 60% of tickets, 96% of the cash. But it looks like a zigzag to me, where if Sacramento was only laying 5.5 last night, why would this be 7.5 this time? Unless maybe there's some injury situations going on here. I don't really know. It doesn't really look like it to me here, so I don't really think so. So to me, it just looks like the line basically just adjusted because of what Sacramento did last night, and they only won by 8. Maybe it's a little bit of an overreaction there. So I would maybe look to take the zigzag in that one. Obviously, I'm not going to do it. Dallas is coming off that big win over Golden State last night as a shorthanded Dallas team. Miami lost at Oklahoma City. Obviously, they're going to lose to Oklahoma City, and now Miami's traveling and Dallas isn't. So Miami does have travel, but Dallas is coming off the big win over Golden State, and Miami an expected loss. So I kind of lean to Miami in this one, but they're down from 2 to 1.5. 62% of tickets, 93% of the cash on Dallas. So the cash percentage is on Dallas, and I don't quite agree with that. Thunder coming off that win over Miami and now having to go up to Minnesota to finish this off. Minnesota coming off another loss to Milwaukee yesterday. Minnesota not traveling. You got to think Minnesota's got to be the lean here, right? Oklahoma City is the team that has travel. They got to go up to Minnesota. They're laying points on the road, traveling with no time off. And Minnesota's got to try to go into the All-Star break on a better note than this, right? You would think. So that's the way I would lean there. But the Thunder up from 6 to 8 with juice, 83% of tickets, 96% of the cash. So that doesn't agree with me either. So 3 of these games I actually disagree with the line moving the money percentage here right now, which, again, I'm not playing these games, but it's not great when you disagree with those things. So I don't know. And are there injuries going on in this game? Maybe. It doesn't look like really. Mike Conley looks like he's still out. He actually might come back today, it looks like. Who knows? But other than that, not really. And then Chet Holmgren, game time decision. Caruso, game time decision. Those are the 2 significant ones for Oklahoma City, I would say. So got to keep an eye on the injury report there. And then Clippers at Utah. Clippers got a big win last night against Memphis, like I said, and now they have to go into elevation to play Utah. But Utah, I think, is maybe even in an even worse spot, even though they're staying home, because they pulled off the win against LeBron and Luka, man. Even though Luka didn't play a full complement of minutes, he played 23 minutes in that game. LeBron played over 30. So it was a big win for Utah against LA with LA's starters pretty much in there. So big win for Utah. Utah could be in a letdown spot there. They are certainly the worst team. The money is coming in on the Clippers, up from 7.5 to 8 with juice, 76% of tickets, 93% of the cash. I probably do agree with the Clippers that the Lakers letdown spot is worse than the Clippers getting a win, which I kind of liked them in last night's game against Memphis. Now they're going out on the road, though, and having to go into elevation right before the All-Star break, though. But again, Utah, big win over the Lakers. And when you're a bad team like Utah, you tend to not do well in games after you have a big win like that. So we'll see what happens there. Then I'll talk about world hockey real briefly before I get out of here. Yesterday, Sweden was able to come back, man. Canada had a multiple goal lead early in the game, and I told you, man, Canada, they're good offensively. They're not good defensively. Sweden is actually pretty good defensively, even though it wasn't really showing early in the game. Yeah, Bennington almost kind of lost the game. I think Canada's defense almost kind of lost the game here. Like I said, Canada, They're going to score a lot, but I don't think they're going to be a very good defensive team, not a very good goaltending team. So Sweden almost was able to do this. They came back and sent the game into overtime. So if you took them on the puck line, I don't know what the line was there, but if you took them on the puck line, you got that one. And if you took them on the money line, I wouldn't have blamed you, man. I mentioned I leaned that way, and Sweden almost pulled it off as a large underdog, man. So that would have been a nice cash there. When you have a big underdog like that and they do send it into overtime, that kind of means you were probably kind of on the correct side. Tonight's game, USA and Finland, of course, are playing because they're the two teams that didn't play yesterday. This game is also in Montreal, I believe, just like last night's. But whereas last night, Canada probably had the home advantage, tonight probably won't be much of a home advantage. I don't know if maybe the U.S. fans will be up there in Canada, maybe to some extent. Maybe the Canadians hate the U.S. and will be rooting against them. But this is what I think is the best out of the four teams in the U.S. against the team that's probably the worst in Finland. So USA, big favorite, minus 360. In this one, I would probably only lean to playing the U.S., though, if you're going to play the side in this one. And yesterday, maybe we should have thought to play the over because he had a good scoring team in Canada and a bad defense in Canada. So the over did hit, obviously, and maybe it would have made sense. This one, I don't know. I mean, I would probably only look to play the U.S. and maybe lay the puck line on this. I think they should win this game fairly easily. It's been announced that Hellebuck is going to be a net for them. So they got basically the best goaltender in the league playing for them. So that's good for them. The U.S. actually has a pretty good defense as well, in my opinion. So I like this U.S. team. Again, I think they're the more balanced team over Canada. Canada's got the better offense. U.S., I think, is better overall. And Finland, I think, is the least of those teams. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, man. Those are my thoughts on everything. My one play, college basketball, Hofstra plus 1.5. Thanks, everybody. Tower Gang Tone on Twitter, of course, patreon.com/Tower Gang. And you get to see all the stuff from yesterday's episode. We did a Penthouse that I think was pretty good again for the post show last night. Go check it out, baby. Tower Gang. Have a good one. Peace.